They are the most popular selling vehicles on the road today. Nearly 40 million pickup trucks are rolling down America's highways and byways. Many are big, full-size pickups. They are advertised as rough and tough. But are they really built better? As you are about to see, when you climb behind the wheel of some pickup trucks, you may be putting your life at stake.
This is not survivable space anymore.
Brian O'Neill heads the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. It's funded by insurance companies that hope to convince automakers to design safer vehicles, which would lower insurance costs. These vehicles, which the Institute buys right off dealers' lots, have passed the government's safety standards. But O'Neill says the Institute does a more real-world test. It crashes cars at 40 miles per hour, slightly off-center, simulating what happens in a car-to-car head-on collision. By studying sensors in dummies and crash data, including slow-motion films, researchers determine probable injuries. Each vehicle is then rated good, acceptable, marginal, or poor. Dateline has no say on which vehicles are chosen or how they're tested. This time, 4 full-size pickups: the Toyota Tundra, Chevy Silverado, Dodge Ram, and Ford F-150 are tested. They all cost about $20,000 to $23,000.
We chose two-wheel drive, short bed. We did choose the extended cabs because that's the popular variation in these vehicles.
This is the Toyota Tundra.
What is this, the breakaway wheels?
Let's look at that again. At 40 miles an hour, the left front wheel and the spare tire both break away from the Toyota Tundra, something the Institute has never seen before. But O'Neill says it's not as bad as it looks.
That wheel came off very late in the crash when most of the crushing and whatever intrusion was going to occur had occurred. It certainly had no influence on what happened to the dummy inside the vehicle.
In fact, an engineer is even able to open the driver's side door.
There's no buckling here, so there's no loss of space for the driver. Little intrusion in the footwell, but basically this vehicle performed very well in the crash test. Look at the rear door. I mean, there's no problem.
The Tundra lives up to Toyota's "Built Better from the Ground Up" slogan. It gets the Institute's best rating, good. The Chevrolet Silverado is the second most popular selling passenger vehicle in the U.S., outselling every car and all but one other truck. Chevy says it's like a rock. Is it?
Clearly we have poor structural performance here. You see the collapse of this section here, major intrusion backwards, steering column moved too much. The structural performance in this vehicle leaves something to be desired. Look at what happens to the dummy in this crash. Goes into the airbag, down below the seat, disappears, comes back up. We didn't record any high forces on the dummy during this event, but clearly that uncontrolled movement is not good.
The Silverado gets the Institute's second lowest rating, marginal. And it gets worse. Dodge calls its Ram the mother of all trucks.
That's not done very well. This is a mess. We've got a major collapse here. We can see the dummy is in a terrible position. The legs and knees are driven upwards and backwards. A person in a crash like this would not be doing well.
This crash test told you that in this kind of accident, you might have a fatality.
There's the possibility of fatal injuries in a crash like this in this vehicle.
O'Neill says it's been a long time since the Institute's seen injury reports this bad in any vehicle. Dodge Ram gets the worst rating, poor. And what about the most popular selling vehicle in America, the Ford F-150? More and more people are buying it as the family car. Take a look at this.
Total failure of the compartment. The safety cage is just collapsed. The dummy is in a terrible position as the structures come back, the seats come forward. I mean, there is no space left for the dummy.
Looking at the crash in slow motion, O'Neill is able to point out specific problems with the Ford F-150.
This is as bad as it gets in terms of crash performance. Look at the collapse of the compartment. That is not a safety cage. That compartment has massively collapsed.
Is this a fatality?
The forces recorded on the dummy's head and neck in this crash were sufficient that if a person experienced those forces, the one possible outcome could be a fatal injury.
If you owned this truck, what would you do? I'd
get rid of it. I wouldn't put my family, my wife, or myself in a vehicle like this.
O'Neill gives the F-150 a pour. But remember, all of these vehicles have passed the government safety standards, which include a head-on crash into a flat wall at 35 miles per hour. The F-150 and the Dodge Ram both got 4 out of 5 stars in that test. Brian, help us understand how this very same truck could get 4 stars in the government's test, and yet this would happen in the offset crash.
Well, the government's test does not really test the structural design of the vehicle because the whole front end takes the load. In this test, only part of the front end is taking the load, and then you see structural failure.
All of the truck manufacturers declined Dateline's request for an on-camera interview, but did respond in writing. GM, the manufacturer of the Chevrolet Silverado, which got a marginal rating, points out it conducts a battery of tests and that this test does not reflect the wide variety of crash modes GM considers in its safety tests. Chrysler, maker of the poor-performing Dodge Ram, says no single test can measure a vehicle's overall safety performance in real-world accidents. Ford, whose F-150 got a pour, tells Dateline it's examining the results of the test to see if any structural changes can be made without compromising the already high level of safety of the vehicle. Ford criticizes the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety frontal offset test as an extremely severe high-speed test that does not often occur in real-world situations. O'Neill is surprised to hear that because Ford often brags to consumers in its advertising when its cars do well in the Institute's test. Can any manufacturer say, well, it's tougher to design a truck to pass this test than it is for a car?
Well, they can say that, but it's obviously not true because Toyota's figured out how to do it. And I don't think Toyota has a monopoly on good crash engineers.
Brian O'Neill points out that in the 6 years since the Institute started releasing test results, automakers have dramatically improved car safety cages. He's hoping that after this first test of full-size pickups, manufacturers will take note and make trucks safer too.